Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So if many of you guys remember, we purchased a new Porsche for this channel and it is already sitting on my lift. Obviously I've got the lower bars removed, the strut bars which go underneath and cross over to obviously support the engine and support the weight at the rear. They're already removed and we've got another few small bits removed which I'll go over when we're actually doing the engine removal video. Nothing too complicated and nothing that many of you guys have really missed. The major bits of removing the engine haven't been done yet. That's going to be done in the next video. But realistically, I'm here to actually talk about a couple of things. First thing being, obviously I know many of you are missing the BMW content. That's going to be coming back shortly, obviously, with all these Porsches going on in my shop. Many of you guys know every time I'm getting rid of one, it's like another one's coming along. So I just can't keep up with the flow of doing these Porsches. And as many of you guys know, when you strip the engine down, the garage ends up filling up with all these Porsche parts, which you don't really want because you can't work on anything else. Bolts can get mixed up, things get mixed up, and I don't want that. Obviously, my E60, on the other hand, I need to bring it back in because obviously, as I said to many of you guys, there's a lot that needs to be done on that inside, realistically. I need to remove the old system, take that out, and I also need to fit a proper CarPlay system in there because I'm not happy with the system that's already in there. Many people will disagree with me on that. Some people will like it, some people will hate it, but I just want to get rid of it completely. Next thing I want to say is obviously, as many of you guys know, the more Porsches you buy, the more haters you get. Now, didn't I tell many of you guys probably last year, a few months ago, that everyone was going to follow the route and everyone was going to end up buying high performance cars that most of you guys who watch can't afford to buy. Many of you are watched driving a BMW. Most people are now going to performance cars. Was I wrong when I told many of you guys that? Many of you guys didn't want to believe me. Many of you guys hated when I said that I was going to encourage more people to go to more expensive, more higher performance cars. And that is exactly what a lot of YouTubers have chosen to do. And there is many big YouTubers like myself, or even smaller, that are now leaving the BMW scene, going to Porsche, Ferrari, McLaren, everything else apart from BMW. And I did tell a load of you guys that last year, and many of you guys didn't believe me. I was quite fortunate to be able to come into this scene with the Porsche market, and there's going to be others that are going to follow suit very quickly. Like I said, there's already people picking up on it, and many people already seeing they don't want to drive BMW no more. As I said to many of you guys, it gets very boring. Because let me just tell you guys one thing. When I drive the 911, very thrilling drive. Great car, all round, performs absolutely phenomenal. But the noise, it gets on your nerves after a while because it's a mid-engine. That noise in the rear is a constant drone in your head. So when I end up jumping in a BM, because of how quiet it is, how luxury it is, it feels like a blessing to be driving that after driving the 911 because it's just so smooth, so refined, so quiet. It's the kind of car you can fall asleep. Like a 911 is not the type of car you could fall asleep when someone's driving that. It's just not the same kind of car. So you could tell the difference between the two. One is a luxury cruiser for, traveling up and down the highways or motorways, and the other one is a proper sports track car ready for racing and high speed. The BMWs on the other hand are not made for that, and this is what I was telling many of you guys. There was a lot of guys that you seem to think were loyal to the brand. A lot of people seem to believe that still, but I can tell you now, the moment these BMW guys come into some sort of funds, or if they had the money, I can tell you right now, they're not going to stay on BMW. And I'm putting this video out now so many of you guys understand, because there's a lot of you who think, these guys are going to stay to BMW only. I can tell you now, they're not. BMW is a very small growth. There's not enough people for BMW. If you want to capture a different audience, if you want to capture the rest of the world, you have to change your content up, you have to change the brand, you have to appeal to a wider audience. And BMW, there's not so much of a wide audience. And in actual fact, most people are actually noticing that their views are actually dropping and they're not getting the same audience anymore with BMW, purely because the audience they used to have were people that used to have these BMWs. But you know what ends up happening? A lot of people end up with a lot of issues with them or can't afford the running cost of them. A lot of people buy them, don't actually repair them because they don't have the space, the tools, the time. are taking them to a garage and can't afford the expense anymore. So what's actually happening is these people are parting with their BMWs and going to buy something they can afford. So then in actual fact, you're actually losing your audience, you're losing your views, because people just don't have them anymore. And that's what happens with a lot of my channel. The same, a lot of people that used to have BMWs, used to watch years ago, are no longer existing. That's purely because they got rid of them because they could no longer afford them anymore. They sold them on and went to something different. Or, you know, they just don't watch YouTube anymore. You know, that's what ends up happening. All their cars are perfect. So if they don't have any issues with their car, nobody's really gonna watch YouTube. So that's why you need to branch out and go to other brands purely for that reason, because not everyone is gonna have a problem with their car every single day. That's simply not the case. There is so much information out there regarding BMW now. It's just become so overrun that there's enough information out there to help you maintain your car to the point there's no issues with them no more. There was years ago, like I said to you, especially on the E60, but now a lot of them faults are very well known, very easily fixable now, to the point you don't need to do content on them anymore. It just doesn't make sense anymore because they don't get the views. You know, people ain't subscribing for that anymore. And like I said, most people just don't have them BMWs, and the people that are buying these BMWs are actually YouTubers that are buying them for their own channels to repair them, to sell them. So it just doesn't make sense to just stick to that brand anymore. So that's why a lot of people are parting ways with the brand and going to something else, because everyone is noticing it, that the views are just simply not the same, the subscribers are not the same, and the growth is very, very slow on BMW because there isn't enough people driving them. You've got more people that are subscribing to you for hating them and got rid of them than you have for actually owning them. So it just doesn't make sense to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So yes, BMW has, I would say, a bigger audience than most brands because of the amount of trouble they have and problems and electronics. That's how this channel got brought up in the first place. But in the same sense, it's not gonna get you into the millions of subscribers for doing BMW only. Now, on the other hand, VAG group cars, if you're doing Volkswagen and Audi, obviously it applies to Seat and Skoda, you're gonna attract the millions, and there is millions, and there is YouTubers out there with millions of subscribers for that reason, because VAG group cars attract a lot because it applies to a lot of different engines. So you get found by a lot more people. Where BMW, on the other hand, only really applies to those with BM, Rolls-Royce, and let's think about it, how many people can afford a BMW and how many people can really afford a Rolls-Royce. It goes to show you though, there is a lot more people that can afford a BMW because they're the in-between. Like here, as I told many of you guys, BMW is a very, very cheap car. But in other countries, that's not the case. They're very, very expensive. And like I said, that goes for Porsche as well. In this country, they're very cheap. When you look into the US market, you're talking like $50,000 for a 4S or $50,000 for a normal 2S. It's ridiculous money. That's why a lot of YouTubers end up with the 996s, because the 997s are stupid expensive over there. And that's the same in the EU. In the EU, when I look at the prices, I'm like in shock because I know how bad it is in them countries as it is to make money, let alone if you're having to spend 50,000 euros, 55,000 euros to buy one of these cars, you'll be left completely broke. So I completely get it, and I understand why not everyone's jumping on the bandwagon and can just jump into a Porsche. I'm very understandable of that because, you know, with today's crisis, the way everything is and the way money is right now, you wouldn't find most people being able to jump into Porsches. But luckily, because the prices are so low here, because these are around 25, 28 grand, some 30, depends on the mileage, spec and condition, but majority of them are around 24, 25 grand. Same for the 4Ss, they're around 25 grand, but when they come up bore scored, they are gonna be cheaper because people take them to garages, get a quote, and here you're looking at about 16 grand to 12 grand. The cheapest you're gonna get is 12 grand with steel liners, and the most expensive is gonna be 16 grand. Now, if you want the 4.1 conversion, you're looking at 21 grand. And you have to factor in, if someone's just paid 25, 28 grand for the car, are they gonna really wanna spend 21 grand to only be able to get back 33, maybe 34 grand for a 4.1 conversion, and you're still losing money? I know they say it will go up in value years to come. That's not now. Obviously, Porsches hold their value, but they're not gonna hold the whole value of what you've just paid for that engine rebuild for having it as a 4.1. So it doesn't make viable sense to actually do the 4.1 conversion. And that's what I mean, guys. Like, there is a lot of people, and like I said, a lot of you guys don't like that I speak the truth on this, but the fact is, There's going to be more and more YouTubers that you watch that do BMW, but the moment they make it and the moment they have the funds, they're going to leave the brand. I know many of you guys don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. You're going to be watching them doing high performance cars from BMW, like myself. They're no longer going to want to drive that car. That's what ends up happening. When people come into money, they find the better cars, and that's exactly what happens. Obviously, for me, I'm not just going out there and buying a car, you know, where it's all fully repaired and fully working. I don't do that. As many of you guys know, my one was bore scored, repaired it, and now it drives phenomenally. Got another one, it's bore scored. Once I've done it, it's going to drive phenomenally, and that's what you're meant to do. But you don't get paid for the full price of them, because as I said to many of you guys, if I paid for the full price of this Porsche, then overhauled it, I would be out of pocket. The price I'm paying for them, then repairing them from when they're bore scored, I'm actually in the money because I'm paying cheap enough for them as it is. Obviously, everyone says, where do I find these? But that's part of being in the trade. Same with my grey one, I found that through the trade and through a friend of mine, and the same with the black one, find it through the trade as well. And that's how you do it. You know, you don't just go on eBay and expect people to give you a car for 10 grand. It's not going to happen. You have to be very clever with it. You've got to remember, I've got trade friends that buy these in for 8.5 grand. And obviously, me giving them 10 for it, it's still a massive profit for them because they haven't even had to deal with selling it, listing it, nothing. They bought it as trade for 8.5. I've given them 10 for it, and the car's worth 25. And that's what you keep doing. It's all about who you know in the industry to be able to get these cars. If you don't know anyone, you're not going to be able to get these cars. It's very, very simple. And that was the same with my Boxer that come up from my neighbor. It come up cheap because it needed work. Like I said, I wouldn't give full price for these cars because of how expensive they are and how much they need. And that's what's happening with a lot of the YouTubers as well, guys. I'm telling you right now, they're all gonna jump on this bandwagon with these high, proper sports cars. They don't want to drive BMW. They use BMW to build up a channel, build up their earnings, build up their revenue to leave. That's what most people do. Nobody wants to stay with the same car. It gets very, very boring. If you want, and nobody wants to buy a bunch of BMWs that you can't even sell on. It's fine to buy them, overhaul them if you want to keep them and you want to drive them yourself. But if you want to actually sell them to get yourself into better things, you can forget it. They're very hard cars to sell and they're not profitable. There is no money to be made in them. You have to buy them next to nothing. And I'm not talking a few grand off. You need to buy them for literally £500, £400 to be able to sell that back for 3 grand. Because as many of you guys know, they need money putting into them. You can't expect to spend 3 grand and then put another 3 grand on top of it when the car's only worth 3 grand. Doesn't make sense. It's the difference with the Porsches, buying them for 10 when they're worth 25 and investing in them. Because you're still gonna come out ahead, obviously not by much, probably about 4, 5 grand, but it's still 4 and 5 grand better than only spending 3 grand on a car and still only getting back 3 grand. It doesn't make logical sense, and that's why people are starting to see that. And I've been speaking about this for over a year. I know many of you guys ain't gonna like that because many of you guys are stuck in them cars and obviously can't afford to go to anything better. But as a YouTuber, myself and many others, they're all gonna follow suit and all gonna change over to these sport cars. There's many of you who like to think they're not gonna, they're going to. And if you don't believe me, I'm already seeing many YouTubers who bought BMW who are not, and now jumping into performance cars that many of you guys wouldn't be able to afford. It's plain and simple. I'm not gonna sit here and lie or beat around the bush about it. You guys wouldn't be able to afford it or even afford the running costs or the maintenance on them. It's just truth. It's just the truth. You don't have the space, the money to do it, and nothing. And these guys are buying these kind of high performance cars just like myself. And that's what I said to you was gonna happen. You're gonna start seeing other YouTubers who you thought very loyal to the brand, gonna be starting to jump the ship to the other brands. I'm telling you that right now. Let them pick up their earnings, let them get a few viral videos and they will be gone. They don't want to stick with BMWs. That isn't an achievement. That was a car just to use, basically like a business, get yourself where you need to be, then you achieve better, which is what I done, and that's what every other YouTuber is gonna do. Thank you very much for watching, guys. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.